Our top focus at 7. One of India's best-selling authors, Chetan Bhagat, is making headlines with an article where he has lashed out at right-wing trolls on Twitter, calling them sexually frustrated men who don't know how to respect women. In a column in a leading English daily, Chetan Bhagat described Bhakts as frustrated and complex-ridden men who speak poor English and claim to be Modi loyalists. He describes Bhakts as BJP supporters who are especially fond of Prime Minister Narendra Modi. These Bhakts, he claims, are all men who are unsure of their English and don't know how to talk to women. He adds that right-wing trolls try to mask their shame about India being a third-world country with chest-thumping nationalism. In the article, Bhagat tries to not blame the BJP. He writes, note that BJP never invited these true Bhakts to worship them. In fact, the Prime Minister had to tell them off, as even he seems to have had enough of their hyper-aggressive bhakti. In his article, the author also criticizes right-wing trolls for attacking Shruti Seth, who had questioned Prime Minister Modi's selfie with daughter campaign.
मेरे हिसाब से फोटोज खींचने से एक पूरे देश का माइंडसेट नहीं बदलेगा। और जैसे कि मैंने ये कह दिया, वो सारे लोग जो उस वक्त अपनी बेटियों के साथ फोटो ले रहे थे, ये समझ कर के हम बड़े खुश हैं कि हमारी बेटी है, उन सभी ने मुझे इस तरह जलील किया सोशल मीडिया पर कि ऑल आई हैड टू से इज कि मैं यही तो कह रही थी, दैट अ फोटोग्राफ डज नॉट चेंज योर माइंडसेट.
Chetan Bhagat there asking Bhakts to lay off. What do you think of Chetan Bhagat's article? Let's take that question to our panel of guests this evening. Our Executive Editor Javed Ansari is with us live in our studios. Also with us, Shaina NC of the BJP and Sanjay Jha of the Congress Party. I want to come to you first, Javed Ansari. What do you make of Chetan Bhagat's article? Is his description of Bhakts apt?
Look, I don't think so. And you know, everybody has a right to their preferences, Mr. Chetan.
But haven't you encountered very aggressive right-wing trolls on Twitter?
Yeah, I mean, I have encountered all kinds of trolls, but then, you know, dwelling on people's sexual preferences and all that, I think certainly this is not done. Left-wing, right-wing, any kind of troll, people are entitled to their preferences, and making such remarks, I don't think it is in order.
Let's also get a word from Sanjay Jha, who's with us live this evening. Sanjay, I know for a fact that you've encountered a lot of aggression by these Bhakts on Twitter. A lot of your tweets get very angry responses, especially from right-wing trolls. What do you think of this article that's been written by Chetan Bhagat?
You know, I think Mr. Bhagat, as an independent writer in a free, democratic, civil society, has a right to interpret the trolls the way he wants to. Now, what he's done in the article is to put them in a certain social, psychological construct that he thinks that they belong to. Now, in some areas, he's clearly on the dot. For example, you know, most of them are male. Many of them appear to be single. There is definitely a very hyper protective kind of an obsession for Narendra Modi. You say anything against the Prime Minister, right or wrong, I mean, you're going to be deluged with and very vicious and violent abuse. For example, take Chetan Bhagat's case himself. You know, I have been very critical of Mr. Bhagat's political views in the past, but because his article today somewhere seems to insinuate that, you know, these right-wing trolls are, you know, at least unwittingly having the blessing of the BJP, at least the BJP gains electorally by having them, you know, go out in the field and, you know, try and dominate it by overwhelming anger or aggression. The truth is, it's got them very, very angry with Chetan Bhagat himself. So, you know, there is a dramatic U-turn. If you're not with them, you're against them. It's a famous George Bush line. So there's no gray area with the extreme right wing in India. Perhaps it's also a global phenomenon. I don't want to comment on the specifics about, you know, what it means in terms of their, you know, overall raw and basic instincts, but there's no denying that there is a lot of suppressed anger. Now, that is a manifestation of a lot of you know, other sentiments that perhaps prevail, but I don't want to comment on that. But at least Mr. Bhagat is right in in believing that the extreme right wing has a very, very skewed and a very distorted version of India that is completely not in sync with the contemporary, aspirational, liberal, tolerant India that we ought to be.
Shaina NC, I want to bring you into this discussion at this point. Now, Chetan Bhagat in his article has clearly said that the BJP cannot be blamed for the behavior of these Bhakts, but at the end of the day, we all know that all these Bhakts are huge fans of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, and the BJP doesn't really make any real efforts of trying to reach out to these people and asking them to sort of not get violent and vicious on Twitter.
Well, let me start by saying that it's an absolute rarity that Javed ji and me are on the same side of the issue, and we have analyzed what Chetan Bhagat has said to the T. Chetan is a good friend and he is entitled to his opinion, but to suggest that any kind of opinion that doesn't agree with him or that is so-called inverted commas right wing is to suggest that they are sexually frustrated, I think is completely uncalled for and below the belt, to say the least. I think that if one has an opinion about the Prime Minister, if one has an opinion about the country, that is warmly welcome, that is part of democratic debate, and Chetan has always been the type to speak about it. But to typecast men and to say that they are sexually targeted, frustrated and are targeting women, I think is so factually untrue. There is not a single example that he can give of anyone who is associated to the BJP or is associated to the Sangh who has made any kind of regressive commentary
Right, but you know, Shaina,
women.
if you were to not look at the sexually frustrated part, look at the other aspects of Bhakt's personalities that Chetan Bhagat has sort of articulated in this column that he's written for the Times of India. He says that all of them are supporters of Narendra Modi. And as Sanjay Jha also said, that they get extremely vicious if anyone writes anything against the Prime Minister. They also chest-thumping nationalists, is what Chetan Bhagat writes in that article. These are aspects of the right-wing's personality as well, something that the BJP has propagated, something that actually brought the current government to power.
I don't agree. I think if at all one sees the kind of popularity that Narendra Modi ji has, it's apparent in every section, every segment of society and world over. And yes, if he does something which is in nation's interest, and you have a segment and section of society that's just constantly criticizing him, which they did in Gujarat and continue to do now, there will be question marks raised by his fans and his followers. But to suggest that because they are raising questions vis-a-vis criticism, if somebody is entitled to freedom of expression, one should be in that same space happy to hear this concrete criticism raised by another segment of society. I don't think that you can typecast people to say that this is right or this is wrong.
Simi, you need to make a we need to make a distinction here between criticism, between the right to criticize and to be then hammered, then to be viciously abused. All of us, and I mean, and I include Shaina. I'm sure Shaina gets her share of is trolled by people on the other side. This kind of intolerance for somebody else's views, you know, I have been the subject. I have been subjected to the most vicious kind of trolling by people just because, you know, you happen to share a view which might not coincide with the one that somebody else possesses. So this, you know, the way people go after those who have a contrary view, or who are not camp followers, or who are not, you know, who don't have a very benign view of things, this is certainly totally unacceptable, and it smacks of a great degree of intolerance.
Sajida, I'll take a last comment from you. The biggest point that the grouse that they have against these Bhakts is that they tend to get extremely vitriolic against anyone who describes the Prime Minister or sort of objects to any decision taken by him. Is that something that the BJP should also try and distance itself from? Should the Prime Minister also, or probably the BJP's social media machinery, come out in the open and say that they want to distance themselves from this kind of discourse on the social media?
You know, I think they will always speak in forked tongues where this is concerned. I do believe that the BJP is not, is a mature enough leadership to realize that this damages them in the long term. Even though if they get, short-term electoral dividends. But end of day, I don't think anybody in their right senses can endorse the vitriol and venom that is manifested by the right wing. I'll give you an example of the selfie with daughters that Mr. Modi did. I saw the right wing go absolutely hammer and tongs with the most pathetic pathetic kind of abuse against actress Shruti Seth, Kavita Krishnan, and it was nasty to the core. You know, I know Nandita Das, the very good you know, actor again, who was intimidated, and she was abused you know, absolutely in an unlimited sense of without any kind of borders when she featured in a controversial statement a few months ago, as seen by the right wing. So end of day, I think it's about where you truly stand. I think the Bharatiya Janata Party keeps making a lot of these self-righteous, sanctimonious noises. The Prime Minister will say social media should not have hate messages, but end of day, that is continuing unabated. So I think they do see somewhere dividends where, you know, the liberal, tolerant lot are intimidated on social media. But I'll be honest with you, this is a country which is so rich in democracy, which is essentially liberal and tolerant. I don't think these trolls can finally win the war. I think young India, or frankly all of India, somewhere down the line, despite whichever political preference they have, do like to believe in living in unity and living with a diverse opinion or whatever ideologies or religions we have.
All right, Shaina, NC, Sanjay Jha and Javed Ansari, thanks so much all of you for taking our time and coming. I'm afraid
Can I
we
just
completely
make
run
one
out of
quick
time.
comment?
Yes, Shaina, go ahead. You have 30 seconds.
I don't think anyone is dissuading people from making any kind of comment that they want to, right, wrong or otherwise. I think the kind of terminology that Chetan Bhagat has talked about applies to himself as well. If he chooses to call the right wing sexually frustrated and say that they are targeting women, this is not just factually untrue, this is also completely below the belt. So if he is entitled to this kind of commentary, I'm sure people who are great supporters and fans of Narendra Modi are entitled to have a complete backlash and to say what they feel is correct. So in the same spirit, if we accept it, you should accept it too.
All right, China NC, you're entitled to your opinion. Sanjay Jha, Javed Ansari, thanks so much for taking our time from your busy schedules and speaking to us on this issue. Chetan Bhagat, one of the most celebrated authors of our country, he's written an article which is drawing mixed responses from various political experts, saying that he's probably spoken too harshly against Bhakts. Of course, the right-wingers on Twitter also under attack for for attacking people on Twitter, attacking those who write against the Prime Minister in an extremely vitriolic manner.